start generational wealth to leave a legacy that will last for generations.
Mrfinance is helping you replace active income with passive income. Brandon Ellington joined us with more. Brandon, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, can you talk to us a little bit about active income versus passive income?
So active income pretty much is when you go to work and you trade time for dollars. Or you get an hourly or a salary. Passive is more like rental income. I like to call it insurance passive income when you got some money and you can got a lot of money and you can derive an income from it. So, yeah.
Isn't that the dream, the passive income? But how hard do you have to work to actually get to that point?
You don't have to work that hard.
Okay.
Good credit. That's the vehicle. So when people have a 680 score or higher, 2 years of credit history, no bankruptcies, no foreclosure in the last 3 years, and minimal credit inquiries, you can pretty much print money in most of your major national banks.
And I think people would be surprised to hear just how much passive income they could make.
Absolutely, they would be. So you can make millions, but it takes time, of course, but you got to build it. But I like to say borrow cash to buy cash from banks. Some people call it as an investment. And I say, what do you call it when you buy a building? You borrow some money with the intent to put money down on the property, to make money from that property. So I just call it borrowing cash to buy cash. And we leverage insurance too. So annuities, IULs, Roth IRAs, non-qualifieds, other things that can build a generational tab that go with it. Yeah.
So let's talk about that, building generational wealth.
Yes.
How does one even begin? I mean, I'm assuming this is a conversation you have as a family.
Yeah.
Here's how much we have to put away for the kids when they get older. How does that work?
Well, so it's mostly based around health. So if your credit's good or it's challenged, you can still invest in yourself. And you can grow that money, So depending on what kind of investment you have, some of them have 14% gains and 6% gains. So you can talk with your financial planner or your advisor, if you will, insurance provider. They should be able to tell you that, because you can ask them the question: how much do I need to invest in me to be able to make this kind of money when I retire? They should be able to tell you that.
And when we're talking about general wealth and the vehicles to wealth,
yes,
part of that is real estate. You touched on that a little bit.
Yeah, my favorite thing. So it's what I've done for 20 plus years. So again, it's borrowing money, from the bank to either buy properties in cash and renovate them in cash, or even with credit cards. So I'm a cheap person, but I'm expensive. So I like points and cash rewards on all that I do. So whether I'm going on a trip, but I do it by way of the business, so it's not intrusive on the credit. So you buy property, you improve property, you refinance that property, take equity, recover your initial investment, and then put someone in it for the passive income that will service the debt and get a tax break for it. Yeah, and then that extra money, you can say, hey, I want to put it into an insurance policy to grow your money.
What about for wills and trusts as you look forward to the future? Where do you begin with that process?
So, everybody has a different, take on that, but you need a good attorney, and one that understands it. I do everything through a business, so I like business trust too. But the living will and the trust, there's so many trusts that are out there, if you will, but what benefits you look for, from it, I guess, if you will.
And it's daunting to sit down with your family and talk about, because you're talking about death and what's going to happen. But it's something that, would you say everybody should be doing?
Well, you should have that conversation, because they have the living benefits that go with it too in many of those policies. So you just got to investigate one that talks about life too.
Yeah. and speaking of sitting down with your family, these are success principles as well that you want to be able to pass on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, so in my family, I preach on good credit. My wife's the mercenary, so she does a discipline, but I'm that way when it comes to credit and finance. So, you can actually build the future that you want for your family. And what I mean by that is that if you have good credit, you could add your spouse or your children to your credit to enhance their credit scores. And so what I tell people is that banks are relationship-based. You need to create that relationship with them. They want to see how you cycle money, how you pay your bills. So establishing that relationship and creating that tenure will give you some access points at some point in time, personal or business. And so no bank wants to be the first one to give you big money. They want to see who else is giving you capital, how have you managed that. So I basically packaged my family up that way. I started businesses for my wife and for my kids to be able to, inherit, financial resources based on what I've created. So I build the credit out based on my good credit, my good name, but I attach them to the business. So now they have the same access points as I do, so long as their credit's in good shape.
And if someone's interested in this process and doesn't know where to begin, can they see you? And then how does that process start?
Absolutely. Well, they'll see me here, but you can't turn on any radio outlet and not hear me. So I practically, I was telling my guys, I got 272 commercials a day, 23 radio shows a week, so I'm out there, So, or they can go to BrandonMrFinance.com. That's usually the best way to do it. You can book an appointment there, get information there. And if you have more questions, someone like myself or my team can definitely get those questions answered.
Brandon, thank you so much. We really appreciate the example that you've set.
Thank you for having me.
And just like he said, for more information, you can head to BrandonMrFinance.com. You can also scan the QR code or call the number right there on your screen.